Yes, sir.
Calling to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Florence Planning and Zoning Commission scheduled for August 1st, 2013. Can we have a roll call, please? Gilbert?
Yes, sir. Chairman Woolley. Vice Chair Patrick.
Present.
Commissioner Petty.
Present.
Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Reed. We have a quorum.
Great. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's see, the first, item 4 is the discussion, approval, disapproval of the minutes of the August, or the April 4th, 2013 meeting. Guys have any questions or discussion, or?
I'm good.
Okay. I'll take a motion on approval.
I make a motion that the minutes for the April 4th, 2013 minutes be approved. I'll second that.
I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Anderson with a second from Commissioner Petty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. Item number 5, new business. This is case number PZ 29-13DR for Mama's Pizza. It's a new sign. You have a presentation for us?
Yes, I do, sir. Vice Chair, Commission, good evening. This case we have in front of us, the Mama's Pizza signage design review. This is located in the Safeway Commercial Center that we have in Anthem at Merrill Ranch, and there's letters on the map there, should be in front of you, that indicates A for the main sign of the building, which will be in the front of the sign, and the panel signs that are going to go on the monument signage that already exist there. So as you see, this property is basically right off of Hunt Highway, and the roadway to the south would be Merrill Ranch Parkway. When we were looking at this sign, real simple sign, there's 4 of them total, 2 panel signs and 2 cabinet main pizza signs. One is actual, the letters pizza that's spelled out, and the other one is for Mama's Kitchen, which is a separate sign all by itself. This is following the Merrill Ranch comprehensive sign package, which it does follow, and it also follows the town code. Not a whole lot to tell you. These are pretty common signs that we get, real similar to what was there before. It was called the Cafe, and it's being replaced by Mama's Kitchen Pizza. The property is zoned PUD, and that's why the sign package is in place for the PUD. So if you have any questions for myself, I'd be happy to answer them. I should mention that you can see from the images, the Mama's Kitchen is green and white, and the pizza letters are going to be red. We did get a letter from, I believe it's Evergreen, basically the landlords, and they did approve this, which we require. So it's all in compliance. Not much more to talk about. Any questions for myself? For staff?
Is this sign lit?
I couldn't hear you, sir?
Is this sign lit?
Yes, I believe so. It should, actually, we were lucky enough to get real detailed drawings. Most cabinet signs are lit up now. The panel signs that themselves are just plastic actual signage, but I believe the monument portion has fluorescent tubing inside, so all of it does light up.
Okay, well, I saw there was a low voltage power pack on it, but I didn't understand what that meant. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have no questions, and so I guess I'll take a motion on this for approval or disapproval.
I'll make a motion that we approve the sign review application, PZC 2913-DR, with the subject conditions that are expressed.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then, you show that we approve the sign for Mom's Pizza. Okay, item 6. This is a public hearing. This is case PZC 27-13-ORD. It's a medical marijuana text amendment, and we'll take the presentation.
Yeah. Vice Chair, Commission members, we're going to have Mr. Eckhoff take these cases on, and we're going to start with the presentations and some brief explanation, and then we'll have the opportunity for the Commission to open up the public hearing.
Vice Chair, members of the Commission, good evening. Case 6A, as you said, it's the consideration of a proposed text amendment to the medical marijuana ordinance. It's the ordinance of the Town of Florence, Pinal County, Arizona, specifically proposing to amend the Town of Florence Code of Ordinances, the land use section, Chapter 152, medical marijuana within that section, and specifically two subsections, 152.02, which is definitions, and 152.04, which is distance separation requirements. And the extent of the changes is really minimal, but what our attempt was to do here is to address a couple of the reoccurring issues that have come up as we've considered these applications in the past. So we've had a few applications that have made it to the Planning Commission, a couple that have made it all the way to Council, and all the applications have been unsuccessful, and there's been reoccurring comments that have come up regarding where the facilities may be located, regarding the separation distance, regarding the distance from correctional facilities. So a couple of the main changes that you'll see, and in your staff report you'll note that if text has a strike through, the text would be removed in the ordinance. If it has an underline, it would be added. So you can go through there a while, and there's not significant changes as I noted, but we do. I will point out a couple of the things that we're doing. There are a couple of definition changes that added clarity, and the buffer that was in there from 660 feet, the 660-foot buffer from sensitive uses and from single-family residential areas would be reduced to 500 feet. That 500 foot, it's not really necessarily a magical number, but it happens to be the same number that the state of Arizona uses for their separation requirement from schools, public schools. So there's consistency now that it's 500 is more universal with the state regulations. Also have listed correctional facility and halfway house as sensitive uses, because when we've had these applications come up in close proximity to the correctional facilities, we've seen the concern that has brought. And then also there's been a concern about the potential impact of these types of facilities to the businesses that are typically located along our major corridors, the visibility, the compatibility, the impact it would have. And so we've proposed an actual setback from the three main corridors, which would be 287, 79, and Hunt Highway. So it's not every single road, but in those corridors where we tend to have a lot of business located, there would be that setback. And then there is an additional condition that is noted that a medical marijuana dispensary could be a conditionally permitted use at the Florence Community Healthcare Facility on Adamsville Road, which we understand. I believe it's it may be getting purchased in the near future and reopened. And that just allows an opportunity for this use to be considered there. It's still a conditionally permitted use, so it still has to go through the process. If going through that process, there's things that come up, and there's a lot of concern about that use being there, Commission and ultimately the council still have the ability to say it's compatible or not compatible. But there was a lot of discussion as we've gone through these hearings on medical marijuana about how it was a health-related type of use, a medicinal marijuana and so forth. And so we thought that facility may potentially be a location for it because it has the capacity to fit it in there. Half of that hospital, actually, when the hospital reopened, only about half of it was improved. The other half still needs to go through a tenant improvement to either become an expansion of the hospital or become a healthcare, a nursing home or assisted living care facility or whatever it may be. So there's room in the facility potentially for this use to occur. And it is, a big factor was that it's zone B2. And this is a use that we've said can be a conditionally permitted use in B2. And if it were in the hospital, it really wouldn't, we don't believe that it would raise the type of compatibility issues that other locations have. So that has been laid out there on the table for consideration. And tonight we have a public hearing on these changes, and then also ultimately a recommendation provided to the mayor and council for their further consideration. And that's it for my presentation. No fancy pictures or anything tonight.
Okay. I'll open a public hearing on this, and since there's no public here, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for questions from the commissioner.
I have one. I was wondering if there's any current pending applications or anything, actions by businesses to achieve a permit right now as of today.
Mr. Petty, members of the commission, there are no applications active, no applications pending, no applications that we're aware of being submitted anytime soon. So the last application that we received, as you are aware, it went to the town council and it was denied. And at this point, we're not sure if that applicant will continue to have his permit from the state renewed, or if it will go back into a lottery or whatever whatever will occur on that. But right now, there are no applications.
And if this process to make these text changes takes, say, a month maybe, because of the council meetings, is that a fair amount of time? If someone started the application process, would he be grandfathered into the current rules, or would he be subject to the possible rules that might come out?
Well, we actually believe that the rules help, the changes actually help in many cases. They offer a location with reduced sensitive use buffers, also change the buffer from, reduce it from 660 to 500. That said, if someone were to come in next week, we would certainly advise them that this is already in the queue, this is going to council, and the ordinance would definitely be adopted before any conditional use permit would ever get through to the council. So we would want any new applicants we would encourage them to comply here, because ultimately their requests would get to council before, after the effective date of this ordinance.
Can't we just say that in your application that you're subject to the new rules when they come into being?
When their application comes in, I think what we can do is just tell them that we're processing this application, and when it goes to council, give them the opportunity to come to the council meetings to discuss any potential concerns. But at the end of the day, since this will be, if it's approved, it will be effective. And so the applicant would have to comply with whatever rules are in effect at the time of their approval, should they be approved. But I think, again, I go back to, I think we've tried to offer a few options here, and really one thing we did is lay it out in black and white that the correctional facility is going to be an issue, because we've seen that with Arizona Department of Corrections and Geo Group and others. And we certainly would encourage, future applicants to be aware of that concern, because it's been kind of a challenge.
Anything else?
I have a question about the limiting or the, I guess, not allowing dispensaries on 79 to 87 on Highway 79B. What's the logic in disallowing dispensaries on those streets?
Well, on 79B, quite frankly, there wouldn't be an opportunity to do it today. There's always a scenario where somebody maybe changes the zoning on property, but I don't think there's I really don't think there's a scenario where you could ever find a property on 79B going through town where you could have an adequately sized property that met the 500-foot buffer from sensitive uses and from residential, the limited commercial that's along Main Street and Butte 79B. Really, it wouldn't accommodate that type of use. So I think you that's in there just for added clarity and just in case at some point something changed. But as far as along the main corridor of Highway 79 and then Hunt Highway and also 287, those are just the main approaches through the main business corridors for the foreseeable future, and the main approaches to town or through town. And with 79, we know what the challenges are already there. If you're on the one side where the code potentially allowed it to work before, you're too close to a correctional facility or a library, as we saw.
That's really my point. I would think our zoning, regulations should cover us there.
It does for the most part. The scenario, as I alluded to before, is the potential of somebody either amending the general plan and the zoning, or somebody looking at the general plan saying, oh, it designates that property for commercial, come in for a zoning to B2. And so we have to think about not only what's out there today that's hard zone as B2 or light industrial, but what potentially could be zoned as B2 or light industrial in the future along those corridors. Because there's a lot of opportunities actually for properties to be zoned either way. Our general plan supports it along those corridors.
Well, I was more concerned about us starting to pick out streets and putting those in the code and not covering that through the zoning. What about Main Street? And, we could just start through town and say, we don't want one of these on this street and this street and this street. Why do we pick out just the, three major corridors?
Pick those corridors, and again, there's, it's not necessarily a scientific analysis, but it's trying to hear the concerns that have been raised every time we've had one of these applications. Again, it goes back to perception, visibility, compatibility. What are the business owners saying? What are the concerns that have been raised from McDonald's or the chiropractic office or others? What potentially would be raised along the same, in similar instances along 287 or along Hunt Highway. I didn't want to just outright say 500 back from any property line, but believe that by addressing those corridors, we would minimize the amount of concerns that have been raised thus far.
I don't object to it. I just think
and also, it is because it is it's a different type of use, and it's through a conditional use permit, and we have the ability in our code, the state of Arizona, when the voters pass this, the law specifically says that we have the right to do these types of regulations. We could in our code just say we'll allow it anywhere, or we could make it more restrictive than what we have here today. We went kind of in the middle of the road a little bit and said, well, we'll allow these uses in certain locations, but they have to meet this criteria. So I think it's pretty fair, and I think we've offered a couple of options that hopefully. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple. In line with that issue, I'd like to add Felix Road to that, and the reason for that is that we did some rezoning up there. Remember, when we left 2 commercial lots right on Hunt Highway and Felix, which could skinny by because it's possible you could squeeze one in there. So I'd like to add Felix Road.
And if, and we would recommend that, if that's the vote of the commission, certainly would recommend that to the mayor and council. Absolutely.
Okay. You want to do that now? Should we take a motion and vote on it, or should?
You can take your motion and then you add it, when you make the motion, you add that condition, and then staff will write it down. And then that's how you recommend it to council.
Okay, and you'll write the words? to
Well,
add Felix?
specifically in 152.04, there would be item 4, and I would say probably a good location to insert that would be after Hunt Highway. So after Hunt Highway and before State Route 287, the motion potentially is to insert Felix Road, should
Yeah.
somebody make that motion.
Okay.
Is there a certain, I mean, I'm not geographically aware of Felix Road, how long it is. Is there just a certain section that you want to exempt? Or the whole-
I don't know. It runs from Arizona Farms Road south to Hunt Highway, and eventually it's gonna continue on through the what is that development again?
The Dobson, the,
Montero?
Montero, yeah.
mhm.
And
Yeah, so
and then
Felix-
run into Attaway.
Both
It's a-
north and south, that ultimately it kind of tees into Attaway. So
Yeah.
north of Arizona Farms, Felix would tee into Attaway.
But there is a North Attaway,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, on up. As a matter of fact,
Well,
I
my
think-
concern is that as it is another corridor that is used quite heavily for people traveling back and forth. I know a lot of people in Anthem, rather than go on Hunt Highway, they come back up Felix and do the jog up to Bella Vista. It's pretty heavily traveled, and we do have those two designated commercial areas right on the corner there at Hunt Highway. So,
And if you say Felix Road, it probably is actually easier from a regulatory standpoint to just say Felix Road
yeah,
versus certain.
There's no Felix Road south of the Gila, right?
no,
So it would be Felix from Bella Vista to
There will
to
be
Attaway.
Well, I'd be inclined to probably just say Felix Road, and whatever part of Felix Road ends up being in the town limits is the part that's regulated. Felix is a little odd. It will come where it's at now where it intersects with Hunt Highway, and it will come down through Montero and tee then into Attaway and then
Yeah.
cross the river. We don't know at this point if that little loop is going to still be called Felix, or if when we go north of Arizona Farms and tee into Attaway, if that's called Felix, or if we figure out a way to run Felix further north. So I think it's probably easier just from a regular standpoint just to say Felix Road.
Okay.
yeah, we could alter it later if it was necessary, but, so I would take a motion then to add Felix Road to that section.
I'll make a motion that we add Felix Road to section, what is it?
The motion was already made, so I think at this point we need a second. Motion by,
Second, then?
didn't Mr. Patrick make the motion?
I think he asked for
I thought he
I think he asked for a
I
motion.
don't think a motion has been made.
Okay, did you, okay, I'm sorry. I thought I heard him say that he making a motion, but you asked for the motion.
Well, do we make a motion for the,
Well,
Recommendation with the approval, or with the addition
Yeah, I
of
think-
Felix Road.
I think if I may, I think if you're sending a recommendation to the mayor and town council, the recommendation would be,
To add,
I'm projecting here what it is, but it would be, potentially to send a favorable recommendation to the mayor and town council with the added condition that Felix Road be inserted after Hunt Highway in section,
section 150 through 204?
mhm.
Yes. So moved, then.
okay, that's,
Can I do that?
Yes, you have a motion on the floor to send a favorable recommendation for the ordinance subject to the change inserting Felix Road.
Yes.
Motion's there, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So with that motion, would you make that recommendation or add that motion to the recommendation for town council?
We will do so.
Second issue I had, and in section 7, under the land usage, it talks about designated caregivers.
I think with that, the way that that motion was made, I think we closed that,
Yeah, that
that
item
case.
is done.
It's done.
What?
Yeah, there was a recommendation.
On that item, agenda item.
Okay, I didn't mean to close the whole thing out, I just meant to close that portion. But since we closed it out, the only thing I want to say about this designated caregiver is, do we have any jurisdiction over or control of how people are designated caregivers?
Should we follow up after the meeting? Are we still on this item, or?
They have the ability to recognize
Okay.
staff or public
Okay,
to speak, so
good. I want to make sure
he's recognizing
Okay.
you to speak.
No, sir. No, as far as the caregivers and the regulations regarding growing in home, the state did not give us the authority to deal with that aspect of it. Just
Okay.
the dispensary side and the official cultivation side.
And that's handled by the state?
State of Arizona Department of Health Services regulates almost all aspects of the medical marijuana program, except what we have the capacity to do.
There are some definitions.
Yeah, I saw it, so, okay, I just had a concern about that. I have an ex-sister-in-law who is a designated caregiver for the state of California, and I wouldn't put her in charge of an anthill. That's a personal thing. Okay, so let's move on to 6B. And this is the case number PZC 16-13-ORD. And this is the manufactured home subdivision text amendment.
Item 6B is PZC 1613 ORD, a manufactured home subdivision text amendment. It is presentation, discussion, recommendation of an ordinance of the Town of Florence, Pinal County, Arizona, amending the Town of Florence Code of Ordinances, Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 150, Development Code, Section 150031, Defined Words, Section 150047, District Use Regulations, Tables A, Section 150055, Manufactured Home Subdivision, MHS, Section 150.068, Recreational Vehicle Parks and/or Subdivisions. And this item, again, is a text amendment, just like the last one, and it requires a public hearing. And ultimately, the commission will be tasked with sending either a favorable or unfavorable recommendation to the mayor and town council for action on this ordinance. This comes to you by way of some direction that we've received from the mayor and town council regarding some modifications that we needed to make in the code. In previous versions of our town code, there actually was a regulation that had an age limit on new manufactured homes that were placed in the community. And through doing a code update or several code updates over the years, that restriction was removed unintentionally. And so we're addressing that aspect of it and placing the age restriction back in the code for a manufactured home. And actually, it would be a 5-year requirement. And you'll recall, I think, that this commission has sat on some conditional use permit requests that we've had before for manufactured homes. And in those, there's always been a condition that the manufactured home be no older than a certain age limit when it's installed. And I believe it's been a 3 to 5 year range on those. So this really ratifies what's been done through the CUP process, but also would apply to where a conditional use permit is not required. It will, however, not apply to replacing a home in a legal conforming permitted manufactured home subdivision that meets all the code standards, such as most notably Florence Gardens. So in Florence Gardens, if you have a home up there that was placed on that property in 1985, if you want to pull that off and replace it, you don't have to go all the way up to a 2007 manufactured home. It could be of any vintage from 1976 and beyond, or if there's more restrictive regulations in place in their CC&Rs, those would take precedence. So what we wanted to do is just in areas where the manufactured home is the first time development on the property, to have the age limit, where you're going to replace a home, not to make it a unreasonable burden up in Florence Gardens, for instance, where a lot of those homes are of an older vintage. Now keep in mind too that we're talking about manufactured homes because mobile homes, which you'll see a few around town, are actually have not been permitted in the town or in the code in quite a long time. So any mobile home you see, which is typically, I think it's before 1976, so it was built to significantly different construction standards. Those are all non-conforming ones that you see out there today. There's also some text modifications because there's been a lot of changes in the industry with manufactured homes and recreational vehicles and park models. We've updated the terminology, namely getting rid of the terminology of trailer and trailer park, which really isn't readily utilized anymore. Also, a manufactured home would not be a conditionally permitted use in an R16 zone anymore, which is a standards 6,000 square foot single family site built residential lot, where we don't see a lot of the conditional use permits in that area, but under this code it would not be allowed. Now you still can get a manufactured home approved as a conditionally permitted use in the larger lot areas. So if you have an agricultural property or a rural residential type of property, you could still apply for a use permit and have a manufactured home. And that summarizes the changes that we're putting forth to you. And we'll need to open a public hearing on this item.
Opening the public hearing. And as there is an absence of public, I'm closing the public hearing, and I'm opening it up to commissioners for questions.
I have none.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we we'll send a favorable recommendation for case PZC-16-13-ORD, manufactured home subdivision text amendment.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Petty and a second from Commissioner Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion is to forward a favorable recommendation on item 6B. Okay, moving along to item 7. This is the call to the public. There's no public, so let's move on to item 8, call to the commissioners.
I have nothing.
And I have nothing. So at this point, we just adjourn. I adjourn the meeting.
Would you say the time for the record?
6:35.